We're going to be talking to Pro Sports Outlook CEO, Rob Mason. What's going on, Rob?
Hey, what's going on, guys? How you doing?
We are good, my friends. How is it over there in Virginia? Is it crazy over there?
Not too crazy. I mean, I'm pretty, sheltered in, so I don't really, see all the action going on. I'm sure it's probably a lot crazier up there for sure.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I was hearing, and I was just telling John Daigle that by June 1st, there's going to be over 3,000 deaths worldwide every single day from COVID-19. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, I personally just try not to, pay attention to all the numbers and stuff and kind of just, let it play out.
But
And,
you're a numbers guy.
focus on what I can control.
Come on, man. You're a numbers guy. We talk about it. You're a numbers guy. You put your
On the field.
On the field. All right. I got you. I'm trying to get you to open up here. But let's get into the NFL first. Tell me, what was your surprise pick? Who were your surprise picks early in the first round?
Surprise picks early in the first. Well, I thought the biggest surprise early on was just the fact that Isaiah Simmons fell to the 8th overall pick. I thought he was one of the best players in the draft. And to see him fall, out of the top 3, then out of the top 5, and then Carolina, most importantly, I thought was the biggest surprise, them taking, Derek Brown, obviously. That was a surprise. Everyone is saying, the Giants again, going Andrew Thomas, that should be the big surprise. I'm a little biased because I'm a Georgia fan, so I've seen the dominant blindside protection that he provides and the consistency and, that ability to transition right to left tackle, unlike, Jedrick Wills, who's on the right side, and Tristan Wirfs, who's going to be a little more raw coming out. So, yeah, for me, I thought Isaiah Simmons and then C.J. Henderson at 9th overall, seeing him go that high, I thought was a little surprising too.
Do you think the fact that it was a virtual draft contributed to why there wasn't maybe as many trades in the beginning, but there also were some trades later on? Do you think the virtual draft was the biggest reason for that? Maybe just not to risk the technical difficulties?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's almost obvious that, it obviously played a part. I mean, this is just based off watching draft day. But if you watch the movie, like, those guys are making moves. It energizes the whole room, gets the guys going. It's like you're making a statement, and when you're just, by yourself or with your family, with your dog, whatever the case may be, you might not have as much momentum or reasons to make those moves. And obviously, these moves are being made because of the value in the picks and all that, but there are these, secondary reasons like that, come into play. And then obviously, the technical difficulties are trying to get this guy in the line and getting this guy's opinion. And, so there's a lot of things that I think going virtual probably made it a little more difficult or made the process, not as easy to make that happen.
What stood out to you in the draft? We were just talking about some of the surprises in the first round, and you saw all these GMs and coaches and management sitting over there, and they're interviewing players before they announce that these guys are going to be players on a team. And I watched the YouTube clippings of some of these after they pick the player, they reach out to the player. Were you surprised that some of these teams weren't more involved with some of the draft picks that, some of the outlook picks that they had in the early first round?
As in, like, why they weren't communicating with
yes.
them better?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this whole situation probably, threw a wrench into those discussions and conversations. And they were kind of just, going with what they've seen on film, what they had on their board, and not necessarily, making sure this guy, picks up the phone or, is wanting to be a Bengal or wanting to be a Lion.
You focus a lot on fan interaction with your company, with Pro Sports Outlook and the several other companies you've worked for. How do you think, in terms of this draft, in terms of the fan interaction, does it compare to a normal setting draft that you would see in the last, again, whatever we've had since the NFL draft went outside? What do you think the difference is in terms of the interaction and the social media, stuff like that?
Right. Arrow, I think it's really interesting this year because it really gave fans a whole new kind of opportunity to, see what's really going on behind the scenes. Like, they had cameras in every GM's place. And obviously, this is a completely different setting than what usually goes on. But, you saw Roger Goodell having, like, the FaceTime or Zoom calls with, various fans, which was kind of funny. But I think overall, it really proved that, sports is king. Like when the NFL draft was going on, every Twitter mention or every Twitter trending topic was based on the NFL draft. Everyone's watching the NFL draft. Everyone's talking about the NFL draft. Like it was literally all about the draft. And I think if, people could go to a bar or could go, wherever people go to the library, like whatever you want to fill in the blank there, it probably wouldn't have been as much attention or as much fan interaction. It just was through a different lens, with obviously being a virtual draft. Now people are talking on Twitter or through their group chats or Instagram instead of, going to each other's houses or watching at a bar or, being at the actual live event. So, I think it was different, but I think overall, you saw it. The ratings were the highest ever.
Yep.
So I think it was just a much more popular event because it was the one and only thing going on.
We are talking to Pro Sports Outlook CEO Rob Mason. Rob, I want to get into The Last Dance. Last night, episode 5 and 6, very, very interesting. What were your thoughts of the breakdown of Michael Jordan and really the fact that he would not wear the Reebok sign when they were getting their gold medal? He made sure that the American flag was over the Reebok sign, that he is really invested in Nike and the brand of Nike, especially when you heard the stories. He wanted Adidas, and Adidas at the point was not doing very, very well in the sales, sneaker sales. So they decided to go to Nike. He did not want to go to Nike, kicking and screaming with his mom. She sent him there and they gave him the most money, and it really changed his career and changed his life in endorsements and equity in the Nike company.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. And you talk about how that changed his life. But I actually, quick shameless plug, because I think it could provide, some value to your listeners, is we actually are coming out with some very cool articles about the Michael Jordan documentary. Obviously, this is, the main thing going on in sports. And so we have a daily best in sports that we were doing when the games were going on. And we'd have the 10 top stories, highlights, facts to know. And so we actually translated it to Michael Jordan specifically during each of the episodes dropping. So for 1 and 2, we had the top things to know. And for this one of the ones we're focusing on is exactly what you're talking about, is Michael Jordan changing the endorsement game. And I thought it was so interesting how Converse, basically told him, we can't envision you being ahead of our talent, and Adidas not being able to make a shoe. And so he ends up going with Nike. And it just showed his extreme loyalty to the brand, that he refused to wear or to showcase him wearing Reebok on a global stage. And so I don't know if you remember the car scene, but he was basically telling them these guys have a whole nother thing coming, and threw the flag on to cover it up. What a clever move. I don't know if they didn't really elaborate on if that was his idea or someone's idea.
That was his idea. That was his idea. Yes. Because I remember I was watching a clip years and years ago of Michael Jordan. He did mention something with Reebok, but I was not sure that when he was talking about him getting the medals and the gold medal, that he had his flag around him, that he said that he wanted to be the only guy, and he was the only one holding a flag around his neck when they got the gold medal. He wanted to be the flag bearer, so his little trick was to wear the flag over the Reebok. I didn't know precisely why he did that until really that documentary last night.
Yeah, I'm gonna come off a little young because that was before I was born, but
I was alive.
It definitely became a topic that even as someone who's 24 years old, I heard about it beforehand, not nearly to the extent that they covered it on the documentary, and then seeing all the reasons behind it. It just, to me, the biggest takeaway was just how loyal he is with everything he does, whether it's to the Chicago Bulls, the organization, whether it's to Nike, his partners, his teammates. He just always exemplified, the utmost loyalty to things that he cared about.
Rob, as a fellow 24-year-old myself, I also was too young
to
witness all that. So my question is, why do you think that this documentary has gained a lot of attractiveness in terms of even younger age groups that didn't see Michael Jordan play live or didn't get to see Michael Jordan in that prime of his career? Obviously, we know about the COVID situation. It's the only thing to watch, really. Right. But are there any other factors besides that and just the namesake of Michael Jordan that you think have helped the popularity trends for The Last Dance?
Absolutely. Obviously, it is because there is nothing else going on. And I think it's so interesting that during a time where there is no live sports, we're not talking about LeBron James. We're not ESPN's not covering Mike Trout. They're not going into Patrick Mahomes, the faces of the leagues in today's game. We're talking about Michael Jordan, probably the greatest, most popular athlete of all time. And people are able to see a whole nother side of him that they, might have never seen before. And I think, it probably would have been a lot less popular if it played out how it was originally going to be played out and shown every other day during NBA Finals off days. But because of this, situation, it created a great opportunity for, people to have a much more vested interest into it. And then because of that situation, now that there is such a large audience on it, they're actually seeing that, this documentary is actually really cool. And you're able to learn so much about Michael Jordan, so much about the Bulls, so much about 80s and 90s basketball that it helps you appreciate the game today and how all these things came about. So I really just think it's about, all the ways that they've been able to exemplify the greatness that is Michael Jordan that's become such an interesting thing and, created these popular trends.
We are talking to Pro Sports Outlook CEO Rob Mason. Rob, you young guys, you 24-year-olds, you millennials, I love the arguments that some of you guys have on trying to compare Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James to each other. And the truth is,
right.
I don't think people understand how great Michael Jordan really is. You could play a video game, and I do that with Speedy sometimes. We play this NBA 2K15.
He destroyed me with Michael Jordan, believe me.
And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's LeBron James, Magic Johnson, or anybody playing against Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan can dominate a game. And I watched this guy dominate the New York Knicks in the 90s. And to me, the best basketball, I believe, in the last 50 years was the 90s. When you talk about Barkley, you talk about Clyde Drexler, and even when Kobe Bryant was drafted, and Michael Jordan, and Scottie Pippen, and Magic Johnson, and Larry Bird, all the great players, and even the Dream Team, which everybody says the greatest team ever assembled, which I beg to differ on that, but that's just my argument. But
interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I do not think they're the greatest team ever assembled, and I'll tell you who I thought was the greatest team ever assembled. But nevertheless, I look at what I saw last night and really throughout this documentary. A lot of these millennials still believe that guys like Kevin Durant or LeBron James, by the time they're done with their careers, they're going to be compared to Michael Jordan. And I just think it's completely ridiculous because I don't think anybody, I don't care how many clips you watch of this guy. You had to watch this guy live every time he stepped on the court. He always played. He wasn't like LeBron James taking a couple of days off because he's too tired or he's getting ready for the playoffs. This guy played every day, every time, every place because he knew the fans came to watch him play. What are your thoughts to that?
I think it kind of goes back to my last point that, like, it's so great that they are doing this at a time where, millennials like myself and even the younger generation can really understand the greatness that is Michael Jordan. And I mean, me personally, as someone who's been, a huge sports guy my entire life, like, I feel like anyone knowledgeable about the sport always considered Michael Jordan the greatest of all time, ever since he retired, maybe even the first time, but definitely after the second time in 98. And then since then, Kobe's made it close. LeBron's made it close. These guys are always going to be compared to him. That's what people do. That's how, they get their clicks, is they, make these articles about who's better, who's greater, all this stuff. But what you have to realize, or what people didn't realize, was the fact that, this guy, Michael Jordan, absolutely changed the game, changed the way people viewed the game of basketball in America, how they viewed it globally. And, that people always talk about rings. Like, I personally hate the fact that people use rings
I agree with
as
you.
support of why one player is better than one player, as if it doesn't take a 12-team, 5-coach management, all these other things that go into it, especially compared to opponents and all these other things. But when you look at a player's greatness, this one guy, what did he do if you put him on any team, on any court at any time? And I mean, it's hard to argue that Michael Jordan isn't the greatest of all time, just considering what he could do on the floor. He could take it to the hoop. He could finish in 5 different angles. He could hit the floater. He could hit, his signature fadeaway from the mid-range. He could take it down from distance and hit 5 threes in a row and then shrug at Magic Johnson in that legendary, iconic moment. Like, he could literally do everything on the floor. I think when you have LeBron James, obviously he's a better passer, maybe be able to defend the post a little better, at least in his prime and his Heat days. But as far as an overall basketball player, if I need to go win one game, I'm taking Michael Jordan.